Can you guys see my Kali? Alright, let's minimize this. Minimize my VPN. Okay. So, ASk Jeeves just recently got retired last week, and I want to just bring you guys through some of the enumeration, from enumeration to user to root, or admin actually, because it's a Windows box, and we'll see how much time we have to get through these. But, so Jeeves sits at 10.10.10.63. So the first thing I usually do is I always kick off a map scan. Very verbose output, so I can see any type of errors, where it's at in the scan, things like that. Don't ping the machine, and then run the default scripts. So as you can see, it starts going through, and it starts going through. I start seeing some ports coming back: 135, 445, 80, 50,000. I know the -SC will do some enumeration for NetBIOS, so I'm not going to worry about those two ports right now. What I'll start kicking off as the script's still running is my directory enumeration of 80, because I really don't know what 50,000 is at the current time. So as I see 80, I come over here and I kick off my Derby directory enumeration basically against that IP address using word lists. I usually start off with a common text. If I don't find anything with the common text, I'll move up to the big text. And you can see it'll go through all the variations that are in the commons file, and then it'll output anything that it finds. So basically, it didn't really find anything. So that's still running. I also, so basically that runs. I'll also go over to the web page and check it out. So you can see that ASk Jeeves sits at 10.10.10.63. You have a little search box, and when you type something in like, just say exploit, you get a application error page. And at first it kind of makes you think that maybe there's some type of SQL injection. It's talking about Microsoft SQL Server 2005, and it's kind of interesting, but if you right click on it, you realize it's an image. It's not really a real error page. So it's kind of a little throw you off the track, nothing big. So we'll minimize that for a second. So as the map scan continues going through, when it completes, because I'm running the enumeration scripts, I'll start getting some fancy output down here, or a detailed output. I have my port 80, so it's telling me what type of methods are supported. It tells me the type of server it is, so it's giving me some information about it. I see 135, 445, not too much information came back there, nothing really of interest. 50,000 TCP open HTTP, interesting, and it's running Jetty web server. So I know there's a web server running on 50,000, so let me kick off some scans on 50,000 against the web server as well and see what comes back. So this is where it's really important to maybe run more than one type of enumeration tool, because my initial scans I wasn't getting anything coming back, as you can see down here, right? So I run my scan against port 50,000. Nothing comes back. Well, that's a bust, right? So now I'm thinking maybe I have to go find an exploit for Jetty, because there's nothing else found except for Jetty. But I was running GoBuster, and I noticed that it comes back with ASk Jeeves and it says status 302. So it's basically redirecting me somewhere if I go to /ASk Jeeves. So if I go up to my browser again, and if you go straight to the 50,000, you get the Jetty. But if you go over to /ASk Jeeves, you get welcome to Jenkins. So Jenkins is like a backend, like kind of like a CMS database type system. The interesting thing, it says log in, but if you click over here on Manage Jenkins, come on. I have to refresh the page because I reset the server. Nope, there we go. So if I click on Manage Jenkins, I can actually manage Jenkins. It gives me access to it, which is kind of interesting. Now, Jenkins has multiple features. I'm not super familiar with Jenkins, so I did a little Googling, and I found that there is a option, Script Console. So it says execute arbitrary scripts. Type in arbitrary groovy script and execute it on the server. So basically, whatever I type here will run on the server. So Googling for groovy script to learn how to write it, I came up with a couple lines of code that can definitely help me. So right now, we don't know what's on the box, what users are on the box, anything like that. So the first thing I wanted to do is show me a directory listing. Right? So if I copy this line, come over here, paste. So basically, print line, new process builder, so it's built in a new process for the script, and it's calling the command with the /c option, so basically it's going to run it, directory C://users. So I'll put that as text in my screen. So run, I scroll down here and I can see I have a list of users, or a directory listing of the users folder, I should say. So I can assume, based on the limited number of users here, that the user flag is going to exist in co-husky. So I can go back to my code here and basically use another Windows command type, alter the script slightly. Actually, I could just even leave that right there. Paste that in, hit run. So now you can see I can get the user flag, because basically I'm going to type out the user flag to my screen. So right there I have my user flag enumeration. From there, I need to look at how can I get a shell on there, because typing commands in here all day long is going to become very hard to do. So what I want to do here, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start up MS console, so Metasploit, MSF console. And normally I try to avoid using Metasploit, but I do use the multi-handler a lot for my payloads. Just makes life easier. Alright, so I want to set my L port to 443. I want to set my L host to my IP address. And I'm going to select my payload, which I already put into my shell. Alright, and I'm going to run this. So basically this is setting up a listener on port 4443 on my IP address using this payload, so it's expecting this payload to come back to me. So I'm going to hit run. You can see it says start reverse TCP handler. So that's sitting here listening. So knowing that we can execute commands, what other commands can we do, right? So we want to be able to upload a file to the machine. So what I have here, and I'll copy and paste this over into the window and I'll walk you through the steps. Okay, so the first command is create a temporary directory. And the reason I do that is because there's so many other people in these boxes that they're either deleting code, moving code, altering things. I want to keep my code secret. I don't want people playing with it. So I created a folder called temp, and that's a writable directory. Then I use PowerShell to connect back to my machine at 10.10.14 to download my Metasploit payload. So I created this using MSF Venom, and basically I encoded it to bypass the AV that's on this box. This box is running a version of Windows Defender as well, so if you just copied your code right over, it would automatically delete. So you have to encode it so it can circumvent the controls. So it's going to copy over my PSE, the exe that I called it, over to the temp directory. Once it's there, it's going to validate my code's there. So I'm going to actually get a visual that my code copied. And then once my code copied, it's going to execute my code. So all I did is basically stagger Windows commands on top of each other, one per line for the script to execute. So if I hit run now, that's going to kick off. Come on.
So here the sim should alert when a web client isn't sent you, because set will log that as that says.
Yeah. Yeah. So right here you can see I got my Metasploit shell. It came back to me. So if I do a who am I? Who am I? So I'm the user Kohasuki. Alright, so the next thing we can do is we can either do a manual enumeration of the system, which will take forever, basically going through each thing, and there's a great website by Fuzzy. I can send you guys the link later that walks you through Windows enumeration. Or we take the lazy man's approach, and we can use JAWS-enum, so just another Windows enumeration tool. So that's where the yeah. So, and this Venom, interpreter, the shell I'm using here is actually nice because it has built-in upload and download functions, which is great for CTF stuff, but not so great in the OSCP because you can't use it in the OSCP.
Can't use upload download.
Can't use interpreter. No interpreter. Yeah. So you can use it one time only.
What if you use Chris interpreter?
Nope. It flags in their network monitoring tools, and they fail you. That's the worst reason you get failed. Oops. Yep. Perfect. Let's delete this second upload. So I'm going to upload that in here. So if I do dir, we can make sure that JAWS is there. There's my JAWS file. Now that JAWS is up there, tell me I didn't save the execute command. Darn it. There we go. Lazy man. So basically this is going to run PowerShell, bypass execution policy, and then output the results to a enumeration file. So I'm going to go back to my shell. This is going to take a few moments. Now, for those who are doing Linux boxes, there's Linux versions of tools like this called like lin enum, lin priv checker. Lin enum is a shell script. Lin priv checker is a Python script. But they basically do the same thing. It takes all the commands you would normally run as a normal user, line by line, and actually output it into a script for quick access. These scripts definitely save a lot of time. There's a box I just did the other day that Windows Defender deletes JAWS. So basically I had to manually go through and enumerate everything manually. So this is going to run. It'll get the output. So while that's running, it's going to output in different sections, and we'll look at the script in a second. But there's going to be a section in the script that says to say potentially interesting files in user directory. So we know user.txt, right? That's the flag we want. But what is ceh.kdbx? Originally this, right. So I didn't know what KDBX was originally, but the CEH caught my name for Certified Ethical Hacker certification. So I grabbed the KDBX file and I Googled what it was, and I figured out it was a KeyPass file once I did that. So once it's done running, I'll show you the next step. And actually I have it locally on my machine. So as it's running, just because we're watching time here, is I download it to my local machine here, so cd/root ls pipe grep. So I have it locally here on my desktop. So we basically can then run KeyPass. Oops, I already have it unzipped. Pretend you don't see this stuff right now. We'll come back to that in a second. So basically, it would say enter a master key, but you don't have the master key. So what you would do for the master key is if we do, I think I already have the hash. Hash. Yeah. So basically, if we run the command keypass to John ceh.kd, and then we echo it to hash. Basically, that's going to extract the hash to be cracked to the file called hash in a John the Ripper format. So once we have that format, we can do John -- word list. My favorite file, as Gavin knows, rocku.txt hash, because I already cracked it. John. Let me go to my other screen because I already cracked the file. Okay. So down here you can see that when we ran John Dash Wireless Rock You, that text hash, it went through the cracking process. It came out with the password Moonshine for the CH. So Moonshine1 is the password for the file. So basically when we open in KeyPass, it would prompt for the master key. Now, I went through all these things. None of these passwords worked. But I was wondering why backup stuff had a question mark as the username. This tool, to me, it's a pain in the butt. I don't know if anyone actually uses it. So you get like 30 seconds, I think it is, when you copy a file or copy the entry or you edit the entry. So if you open it up, you can, let's see, yeah, if I go like this, if I want to see the hash, right? You'll start seeing, it'll start counting down and eventually wipe it out. So basically this is an NTLM hash. So we can copy this hash. And now that we have that hash, as I said, I'll come over here, paste it here so I'm not constantly going back to that tool. We can now use that hash in other tools. So what we can do then is, we really don't need this shell anymore. Actually, since we're in here, I'll show you guys this real fast. What did I call that file? Jaws. To show you what this file looks like. So you can see each section is broken out by like a banner. So we can scroll through it, right? And you can see different things you want to look at. Show you ports, folders, things like that. So that's the enumeration that you're going to get out of that file. And it's basically your job to understand what's the oddity, right? It'll tell me patch levels, what's installed, what's not installed, all running processes. So I would go through this data and analyze it to figure out, hey, what's my attack vector that I can look at? So we'll exit out of this. I'm going to exit out of that shell. And now we're going to use a different shell here. I'm going to jump. So Metasploit, Metasploit really doesn't have a lot of great enumeration tools. Like you can run basic commands like ifconfig, ipconfig, things like that. But when you want to start checking the registry and you want to check the using like tools like when you're on Windows machine, like if you want to find users, like you're gonna run the net users command, then you're gonna run net user for each user, figure out what permissions they have, things like that. You're gonna have to manually run each thing, and basically that tool does that all for you. So this website, fuzzysecurity.com. He has a great Windows tutorial, and basically he walks you through like I want to say it's close to probably 50 to 100 step process of each command to run. So get the system information, so systinfo, grab the OS version, host name, echo the username you are, net users. So basically that script is taking all these commands and putting it into one payload to do it all for you. And so you typing that all out. Like right there. So that's why I used the script. As I said, the machine I did the other day, BART, you can't upload this script to it. So basically on BART, I manually went through each one of these steps. And it wasn't until somewhere in this document I found something that was of interest that I was able to use to continue on. So that's why I used that script. Really, once you're on a box post-exploitation, especially if you're doing the OSCP, you can't use anything such as that's automated in the sense of it's commercially built. So like you can use scripts all you want, and that's the whole thing, you want to be able to script, but you can't do any type of thing with Metasploit. So pretend Metasploit doesn't even exist. So when I first did this box, I actually used, I passed the hash a different way. But what I'm going to do for time is I'm going to try to use the Windows, the Metasploit version to pass the hash to make it faster. So I'm going to use px execute. Let's see here, we're going to set our host to 10.10.10.63. I'm going to set, what else I want here? Do show options. So that port's already set, so I want to set the other items. So I'm going to do set SMB user to administrator, set SMB pass to that hash. Let's see what else I gotta do here. And that should be all I need to set. So in theory now we should be able to type in exploit. Come on, exploit gods. Okay, so you can see it's passing my my interpret session, and now I have a shell. So if I do shell, who am I? I'm the NT authority system. Right. So CD administrator, CD desktop. Oh look, there's a file called .text where root.text should be. So we do type .text. It's going to tell me the flag is elsewhere. Look deeper. Now, that took a little while to figure out. So one of the things you can do is if you do dir/r in this directory, you're going to see what's called an alternate data stream. So you can see it's basically hidden within that file, root.text. So originally I used a PowerShell to get it out. So I use this command here. Hopefully I just break it, and I can get the root flag. Now, if you're not familiar with PowerShell, you can also use more, and then you can use this here. Oops, and hopefully that works. Yeah, because I can't go backwards. And you get the flag as well. So at that point, the challenge is over. I think the hardest part about this challenge was actually first learning Groovy script. There's people out there that have written some crazy scripts to run. I need something very simplistic that I understood so I can troubleshoot it. And that's why I broke it out like this and wrote it this way. And then KeyPass. I originally used Hashcat to crack it, which was a little bit faster than John the Ripper, but was a lot more painful to do. So John the Ripper actually looked a little bit better. And then figuring out an easy way to do past the hash, that was a little tricky until I looked at the Metasploit, and then I looked at PS execute, syntax.